what is your after hours routine look like, or your morning watch list look like? Could you maybe talk about the importance of having a process and a system to find stocks and to get ready to trade them?
First of all, great question and very important. So, one of the things that happened when the market just got easy and everything's kind of following through, people just assume that you could have like a trade ideas gap scanner and you run it, and then all of a sudden you go out and make money, right? No joke. Like, I won't name any names, but like I did a conference in San Diego once a couple of years ago, 2019, 2020, whatever it was. Kid comes in, he's got a story. I turned $500 into 10 million, 13 million, 15 million. He comes in. I tell the people that are running conference, I'm like, hey, make sure I go after this kid because, you know, he's a kid, right? And I'm like, make sure I go after this kid because he's not going to want to come after me. I'm going to bring down this house. And they're like, no, he's the ringleader, whatever. I'm like, all right. So I'm watching this kid's thing, right? They're like, hey, how'd you make all this money? Well, I turn on my scanner. I look for the top gainers in the mornings. And then, when they break the pre-market high, I buy it. That sure is one piece of maybe one setup, but that's not really a strategy that you can use like long term. That is a specific thing you can do for periods of time, and it's one small piece of the puzzle. So a whole subset of traders have just grown up thinking like, hey, I can buy a scanner, and therefore when a stock takes out its opening range or breaks its pre-market high, that's trading. That's not trading. Like that is maybe 1 millimeter of trading, and it works for maybe 1 or 2 months out of the year. But you don't make millions of dollars that way. To actually be a trader, you do need systems and processes for everything. So how I always look at things is like this. You have different setups, right? So say you have 5 or 6 setups in a bull market, 5 or 6 different setups in a bear market, and then you have accumulation phase, distribution phase when the market's consolidating. Each specific setup has to have its own processes and routines. So how you want to look at it is like, say, for example, you're baking a cake, right? You've never baked a cake in your life. So you want to bake this cake. It's the first time you're building a cake. So when you are doing that, what do? You get a recipe from somebody or a book, right? And you follow it down to the T. It's like 2 pinches of this, 2 pinches of that, 400 degrees this, 350 degrees cooling, 15 minutes in the fridge, so on and so forth. And if you don't follow that specific setup, that specific way, what happens? Your cake tastes like crap. Your cake, it's no good. And trading is the same way. For every specific setup you have to have a recipe. You've got to have a recipe for it. And it's got to be 1, 2, 3, 4. And what happens is when you're new, if you're missing 2 pieces of that recipe, your trade goes to crap. And that's the difference between winning and losing. But what happens, and the beauty of trading is this. At some point, you're baking this cake. Say you bake that cake 100 times, 200 times. You don't need the recipe anymore, right? You're not sitting there with it in front of your face, like 2 pinches, 3 pinches, 400 here. No, you are the master of this cake. People come to your house to taste your cake. You made it hundreds of times. Everybody in the neighborhood knows you're the cake master, right? And you're not looking at a recipe anymore because you've had the repetitions to do this. And so now you know, like you're doing it intuitively. And trading is the same way. You've got to make every trade intuitively. So in the beginning, you have to have a recipe for every single thing. And then after you do it hundreds of times, you don't need the recipe and the checklist in front of you, right? You know how to take the trade. You're taking it all in at once intuitively. And then when you reach a true mastery level, all of a sudden, you can take pieces of your recipe out and switch them and add your own spin on things. Like, I'm not going to use sugar. I'm going to use cinnamon. I don't like things so well done. I'm going to lay off a little bit. And all of a sudden, you're putting your own spin on things and you're calling these audibles. And that's what happens in trading. When you have enough experience and you've originally had the checklist, and you got to follow that checklist because you're not going to make any money until you do. But then once you get mastery, you can start to ad lib a little bit. You can call an audible. And that's when you become a true master chef, right? And that's how it is with trading. When I make a trade, or if Nate makes a trade, or Phil Godeker makes a trade, we're not working off a checklist anymore. We know when to call the audible. We know when to change it. But the only way you can get through that is by having that checklist and doing it over and over. So the way that you have to do that in terms of your processes of, say, scanning and getting ready, you have to have something more than I just look for gappers. You've got to have a top-down approach. So what I mean by top-down approach is, like, for example, when I scan, I use TC2000. You could use any trading view, any platform you want. I use a top-down approach. I first look at all the different market indexes. I got 30 indexes that I watch. It can be from gold, silver, small caps, mid caps, tech stocks, SPY, Europe, so on and so forth. So I look through that. I get an idea of what's happening in the general market in terms of all the different angles. All right, cool. Now, after that, then I run some scans, right? So, you run some momentum scans both up and down. So like I'm looking for, say, for day trading purposes, you're looking for top gainers with expanding volume that are hitting certain resistance levels or pulling back to some supports and bouncing off that. Simple things, right? So I start going through all of those things. I'm flagging anything that might look interesting. Then beyond that, right, I'm starting to go through and say, okay, what are stocks that are trending up the most the last 5 days, the last 30 days, the last 90 days, right? So I'm aware of like the big trenders. So I'm going through a huge process here, and it doesn't take long. But what's happening is this process gives me a pulse of the market. See, when you go through, say you go through 1,000 damn stocks every day, you're learning things beyond just what you're going to trade the next day. I'm not going through these scans to find out what I'm going to trade the next day. I mean, I can just call Nate. I can call Dan Mardo. I can call a couple of my friends. I can go in my chat room and find 5 ideas. That's besides the point. I'm looking for ideas that nobody's thinking about. But beyond that, when I'm doing these scans and things are showing up on the scans, I'm also looking and saying, like, how is this playing out intraday? Hypothetically, where could I have bought this? Hypothetically, if it's trending, like, could I have done this? Could I have done that? So now you're marrying your eyes to what's actually working in the market. Hey, these type of stocks, this type of price point, this type of sector is working right now. And these are the intraday patterns that work. So say you just went through, like, say, the top 100 top gainers of the day. It might not give you any ideas, but what it may do is say, whoa, these are the patterns they're coming out of. This is how they're moving intraday. And then this is how I could have played them, right? And so now you're putting it into your head. And now you're marrying yourself to these patterns that are working in this general market. And that's the big portion of scanning. That's why you want to scan. It's not to just get the next 5 plays. You can do that. You can just buy a subscription to somebody's chat room and get 5 plays. That's beyond the point. You want to have a pulse of the market. What's working, why it's working, when it's working, how it's working, what sectors it's working. Man, and it's crazy. The market itself, you will see some markets where, like, only stocks over $100 are moving. It's not even a sector or company thing. You just see that's what happened. There's some markets where, like, man, like $20 to $50 stocks are going. Some markets only tech stocks are going. Some markets only this is going. And so when you go through the scans, now you're getting repetitions. You're training your eyes on patterns that are working, and you're reverse engineering what's working so you know what to look for. And then you build out your list. Well, now you've just already snapshotted in your brain all these patterns that are working. You know what to do. Hey, this company doesn't work off this pattern. It only works like this. And that's the beauty of having an awesome process. You get your watch list, but now you got the pulse on the market. And you can't beat that. When you have an intuitive pulse on the market and you're flowing with it, I mean, you're not even thinking about trading, man. You're just doing.